pastor as he comes to bring the word today.
Wow. Welcome. Good to see you. Glad you came to share the service with us today. Make yourself at home. I want to talk to you today. How many have ever really been down, discouraged, depressed, been down? I guess everybody has. I want to read you a letter from that was the proud parents of a first-year college student. And this is the letter that the daughter wrote to Mom and Dad. Dear Mom and Dad, sorry I haven't written in a while, but we have had no stationery since the terrible fire in the dormitory. I was in the hospital with third-degree burns for several weeks. But the doctors say there is at least an outside chance that I may see again. A neat fella named Bill allowed me to stay with him during this recovery time, and you should know that you will soon be grandparents. P.S. There was no fire. I was not in the hospital. I'm not blind. I'm not living with a guy, and I am not pregnant. However, I did flunk French, and I got a D in economics, and I just wanted you to receive this information in the proper perspective. I'm going to venture to say there is not a person listening to me right now who has not had and probably has now some burdens that are heavy to carry. If we fail to keep burdens in proper perspective, they can become overwhelming in a hurry. Now, we all have burdens. We need to understand a little bit about what burdens we're talking about here. Because there are some burdens, it just means you have a load, you're having to carry something that's heavy on you. And there's another burden. That is the burden of our responsibility, our duty, something that we have to do. You can also have a burden that is oppressive on you. You just can't get it off of your mind. It's on your mind all the time. You wake up with it on your mind. Listen to this statement. Life is 10% what happens to us and 90% of how we handle what happens to us. Now, we all have burdens. And your burdens that you carry and not know how to handle will either make or break you. Joseph in the Bible had the burden of years in prison because of a lying false witness. But Joseph, wherever he was, his brothers sold him into slavery. But wherever Joseph was, you will notice one thing about him. He made his time as a slave productive. And it got to where his master so depended on him, it said that anything that was done, Joseph was the doer of it. So he did not suffer through the burden of even being in prison. He made his time there productive. Job had the burden of lost family, lost wealth, and lost health. He was a wealthy man and lost it all. How many know that would drive some people into severe depression? Job chose to trust God no matter what. He said, though God slay me, I will trust him. Jesus had the burden of the cross that was before him. He went to the garden and he prayed. Now here is Jesus, the Son of the living God. And he prayed, Father, Let this cup pass from me. I don't think I can handle it. Nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. Now, we all have burdens. The question is, what do you do with your burdens? I want to show you 3 things about burdens that you can do. Galatians 6, verse 5 says, every man shall bear his own burden. Now, you're going to get an eye-opener today, and I believe it will help a lot of you. This may not be the best sermon you've ever heard, but it will be as helpful as any you will hear in a long time. Every man bear his own burden. The word there is portine, and it simply means you have the burden of bearing your own responsibility, of doing your own duty. And many tasks have never been done because someone said, well, if I don't do it, someone else will. Now, that's not true. That is not a true statement, because no one can do what you were assigned to do. If you have an assignment, then no one else can fill that assignment as well as you do. Now, they may get by with it, but it's your burden, your responsibility. Let me give you an example. A student complains that his grades are bad because his teacher doesn't like him. He cannot or will not admit that his grades are bad because he didn't study. Teachers do not give you grades. You give yourself grades. The teacher only records what you did or didn't do with your duty and your responsibility. It was your burden. It was your responsibility. What you did with it or didn't do with it will be recorded. So school's about to start. I suggest you get some study habits and study. Apply yourself. That's your duty, your responsibility. A lot of people get in debt, and then they want someone else to bail them out. They overspend. You do not have a budget. Listen, if you do not have a budget, you're an absolute slobbering idiot, because you don't know where your money's going. And you wind up with too much month at the end of the money. Well, Mack, you ought not to have said that. Why not? I knew you wouldn't say it. That's why I said it. You need a budget. You need to get your debt and your spending under control, and most of you need to cut your credit cards up and throw them away. Quit living on plastic. It will eat you up. A rich man is rich because he lives like a poor man. But a poor man is always poor because he tries to live and spend like a rich man. When you spend more than you make, you're headed for serious trouble all of your life. See, I don't like that kind of preaching. Good. I love it. Hang around. A drug addict or an alcoholic who blames his addiction on the circumstances of his life. Well, I was mistreated, or I was abused when I was young, and I'm a drug addict, I'm an alcoholic. You're deceiving and lying to yourself. There is not a person here, I promise you, if you let me dig into your past, there is not a person here that does not have something in their past that they could use as an excuse for being a failure. Life did not put a funnel in your mouth and pour alcohol down your throat. And life did not put dope in your pipe. It didn't put a pill in your mouth. And it didn't blow some dust in your nose. And it didn't put a needle in your veins. You did that. That was your duty, your responsibility. People want to use their past as an excuse for being a failure. What's your excuse? What's your excuse for not doing your duty and doing your responsibility? No one can believe God for you. No one can go to church for you. No one can hear the gospel for you. No one can repent for you. And no one can give for you. That is your burden, your duty, your responsibility, and God will hold you accountable. It's appointed unto man once to die. After this, the judgment, your accountability. No one can do that for you. There are some burdens that you have to carry yourself. Every man shall bear his own burdens. There's some things no one can do for you. I hear that. Well, if I had more money, more time, more talent, more education, more ability, then I could do more. How much more do you need than what you already have? And if you're not using what you already have, why do you think you would use more if you had more? How much more do you need to do your duty? Let me give you some examples. Shakespeare only had 26 letters. Beethoven only had 7 basic notes. Rembrandt only had 3 basic colors. Einstein only had 10 numbers. George Washington Carver only had a peanut. Moses only had a shepherd's staff. David only had a sling and 5 stones. The widow that stopped the parade of giving, she only had 2 pennies. But she gave more than they all gave. It's not what you have, church. It's what you do with what you have. Are you using what God has given you? What you do with your soul is your duty. What would a man give in exchange for his soul? That's your responsibility. No one can be saved for you. No one can confess Christ for you. You must confess Him yourself. No one can walk the aisle for you. No one can get baptized for you. You have to do that for yourself. You have to bear the burden of your own soul. When Jesus said, "Let every man take up his cross and follow me," no one can take up the cross for you. You have a cross you must bear. You have a burden you must carry, and no one can carry that burden for you. Go to number 2. This is the second one. This is still in Galatians 6. Now that was verse 5. Every man shall bear his own burden. Verse 2 says, now listen, is this a contradiction in the Bible? He says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Taking care of each other is not a suggestion, it's a command. If you want to fulfill the law of Christ, Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples if you have love one for another. If you see a brother that's carrying a heavy load, is there some way you can help him bear that load? What can you do? The word here is baros. Very precise. The thing about the Greek is very precise. It's no misunderstanding. The first one was that you had to bear your own burden. That's your duty, your responsibility. Baros means grief, misery, pressure. Someone who is carrying a load of grief, they've just got a lot of pressure, a lot of family problems, whatever problems they have, you can help them bear those. Now you can't help them do their duty, but you can help them bear those. Today, Christians don't want to be bothered with other people's problems. I mean, a friend in need is no friend. Galatians 6:1. Listen to this. If you see a brother overtaken in a fault. Now, actually it says, if you know or you are aware or although you are aware of a brother who has been captured and fallen into the enemy's trap. If you see a brother overtaken in a fault, you who are spiritual, this is the way it is today. You who are spiritual, criticize him, talk about him, rebel against him, play Paul Revere, spread the word of how bad he is. No, I'm sorry, that's not what he said. He said, if you see a brother overtaken in a fault, you who are spiritual, restore such a one with the spirit of meekness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. The implication is that you better watch it. You go to judging him instead of restoring him. And what happens is you will very quickly find yourself being tempted and falling into the same trap that you judged him for. And then he says, second verse, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. It's our duty, our responsibility to each other, not to withdraw from someone who is in grief and misery and suffering, but to try to help them in any way that we can. To lift the load, to be a lifter. Let me tell you something that I see a real danger taking place today. And it causes all kinds of problems in homes, marriages. You have one of the mates who's a crusader, and they've got a family member that's in trouble. They got a mother that needs help, whatever, and they spend all of their time trying to help carry someone else's burden, and they neglect their husband and their family. Now you better be careful. What happens is you've got a distracted wife and she has a husband who has someone at work that's going through a divorce, a sweet little honey, and he's trying to help her, and the first thing you know, pow, lightning strikes. Now, whether you like it or not, there's some burdens you better leave alone. You try to bear someone else's duty and responsibility, you're headed for problems, and you will cause problems. For this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife. Well, it doesn't say that a wife's supposed to leave her father and mother. Oh, the implication is so strong. A wife is in submission to her husband. Jesus said, you who are burdened and are heavy laden, come unto me, and I will give you rest. Jesus lifted people up. He didn't put them down. He told the lady that was taken in adultery and was about to be stoned, he said, neither do I condemn you. I don't condemn you. He just lifted people up. In fact, if you look around and realize, he lifted us all out of the miry clay. He lifted us out of the quicksand that we were about to drown in and set our feet on the rock. Let's be lifters. Let's lift each other up. Let's help people bear their burdens if we can, but let's not intrude and try to carry the burden of someone else that's their duty and their responsibility. Someone reminded me this morning, here, the three rules that I live by and that this church operates by. The golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. The silver rule, do at least as much for yourself as you do for others. And the iron rule, never do for others what they can and should do for themselves. That's the rule. That's the rule. Let's be lifters. You know, every one of us could be, hey, maybe I've just come up with a whole new category here. Somebody asks you, what do you do at church? I'm a lifter. What's a lifter? I help build people up, lift them up, encourage them. I go to church praying, Father, show me somebody today I can help ease their burden and lift them up a little bit. Let's just all be lifters. Number 3, 1 Peter 5:7. Casting all of your cares or your burdens on Him, for He cares for you. There are some burdens that no one can carry for you. You have to carry them yourself. That's your duty, your responsibility. Now, there are some burdens that people can help you with. Grief, sorrow, pain, misery. You can help people bear those. But the good news of the gospel is we can bring all of our burdens to the Lord because He cares for you and He can help you bear those burdens. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted above what you're able to bear. But with every temptation, He will make a way of escape that you may be able to bear it. That's key, that you may be able to bear it. David, the king, was so overwhelmed at one point in his life. He was chased by Saul. They were trying to kill him. He didn't have anywhere to turn. He would run about as far as he could run. And he cried out, oh, if I had the wings of a bird, I'd just fly away and be at rest. But he knew he couldn't fly away. He knew he didn't have wings. He knew it wouldn't work. So he said, but I know that my God will give me strength and sustain me, and I will stand. You cannot fly away from your burdens. You can't run away from them. It doesn't make any difference where you go, because wherever you go, there you are. And the burden will be there with you. You can't run away. You can't fly away. You can't get away from them. God, He promised He would not leave you alone. He would give you the strength to be sustained and to be able to bear it. God did not promise He would remove the burden. He didn't promise nothing bad would ever happen to you. He didn't promise to take the pain away. Now you better listen. He did promise to sustain you through it. He told Paul about his thorn in the flesh. My grace is sufficient. I don't ever remember a time in my life as a kid or anything else that I believed in fairy tales. I never did believe in Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, or the Tooth Fairy. I'm a realist. I am a pragmatist. I believe in what is real. I have a problem with these fairy tale, phony, fake preachers who preach a phony, fake, fairy tale Christianity. They are claiming that if you've got faith, God will make you rich. If you've got faith and send them some money, God will make you rich. He'll take the pain away. You'll never have to suffer if you've got faith. You'll never hurt. You never have to go through the fire. I'm going to tell you what. The Bible doesn't teach that. And anybody that teaches you that, Paul says they're perverts. They're preaching a perverted gospel. They're switching and changing the gospel to fit what they want to do. And they're making merchandise of God's people, you. God did not keep Daniel out of the lion's den. He just shut the lion's mouth. He didn't keep Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego out of the fiery furnace. He just didn't let the fire burn them. He did not do away with Paul's thorn in the flesh. He gave him grace to go through it, to bear it. He did not keep Paul out of prison. He did not keep Paul from being beaten with 39 stripes on 3 different occasions. He did not keep him from being slaughtered, murdered, having his head cut off, and he did not keep the apostles from being crucified and murdered and martyred. Who do you think you are? I want to tell you a little story, true story. 6-year-old boy did not want to go to school. He was terrified. He was born with a birthmark that covered half of his face. And he was afraid to go to school, afraid that the kids would laugh at him and make fun of him. And he begged his mother not to make him go to school. After the first day of school, he came home in tears. His worst fear had happened. He came home crying, "Mother, please don't make me go back to school." His mother held him close and said, "Son, there are some things in life that you cannot change. There are some things in life, I can't change them, you can't change them. Son, we can live in a fantasy world, and we can pretend that your birthmark will go away. And perhaps God may choose to perform a miracle and remove that birthmark from your face. But son, there are some things we cannot change. And when that comes, we need to learn to turn those things over to God." A lifetime later, Dr. Charles Eliot resigned as the president of Harvard University. In his final address, he said the most meaningful day in his life was when he was 6 years old, and his mother told him the most valuable lesson anyone will ever learn in life: that there are some things you cannot change, and those things you must turn over to God. The good news of the gospel is, whatever your burden is, you can always bring it to the Lord and leave it there. Now, that doesn't mean He's going to make it go away. He may choose to do that, but He may just give you strength to bear it.